Hey there, listeners. Well, I had an interview with a lady called Anne-Marie Anderson, and wow, what a conversation, what an interview. She's the audacity expert. She's a three-time Emmy award-winning broadcaster, was on ESPN, and is a keynote speaker and an author of a book called Cultivating Audacity. And it's actually a blueprint for living a fearless, fulfilled life. And we had a great discussion about all sorts of things. And one thing that we talked about was taking risks, that their willingness to take bold risks by leaders is very important. Anne-Marie talked about the four basics, and I'm not going to share what they are because you need to listen to the episode to find out those different areas. But if you can play to your strengths, that's the important thing. You know, what she shared in this interview is just amazing insights, and one that you probably want to take notes, but have a listen to it. So sit back and enjoy.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos.
Hey there, listeners. Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Leadership is Changing podcast. Great to have you here with me. And I've got a great guest with me here, and her name is Anne-Marie Anderson. Anne-Marie, a massive welcome to you.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to talk with you, Dennis.
Excellent. Now, whereabouts in the world are you today?
I am in Los Angeles, California. That's where I live now. I'm not an Angelino by nature, but moved out here about 20 years ago.
And you moved out from where? Where are you originally from?
Colorado's really home.
Yeah.
I'm more of a mountain girl, but I don't mind the beach. I'll take the sunshine in the winter.
Oh, that's cool. That's very good. Yeah, it's quite nice to have it in the wintertime. Now, you are a three-time Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, and listeners, you can't see this, but I can see the three Emmys there just behind Anne-Marie, and also a keynote speaker and author. So what I'd love you to do is just tell us more about you and your background.
My background, I always lead with this first, is that I'm a mother of three. I always lead with that because it means I've got a lot going on, as do you, and everything else, so that's got to be my priority. I'm also 35 years into sports television. I started at ESPN when I was 21 years old. And I have been there my entire career. I also work for a variety of other networks. And I decided to write a book called Cultivating Audacity, basically sharing some of the lessons I've learned from being in the boardrooms and locker rooms of some of the most successful franchises in American sports.
So one child for each Emmy Award?
Yeah, perfect. I won them all before the kids. Imagine that. My performance went down after that, I think.
Oh, dear. So that's all good. And it would have been fascinating to have a career in the boardrooms, the locker rooms and things like that with these athletes and in the sports industry. 25 years ago, well, I think that's when you started. What was it like for you as a female in that kind of industry? Because sometimes you look at it and it's very much male-dominated. But I've noticed that over the last few years, here like in New Zealand as well, we're seeing a lot more commentators and so reporters, journalists and so forth who are female coming into the fold and commentating games and pre and post interviews as well. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I agree. As 35 years ago, I started at ESPN when I was 21 years old, so there gave away my age. And I think there were maybe 7 women in SportsCenter at that time. We're still a pretty tight group. So I won't say it was rough necessarily. I had a lot of great male mentors and colleagues who took care of me. There were certainly some people, especially as I became a producer, that had some difficulty accepting my role in leadership there. And then moving into the play-by-play, I call it live events now. At the time that I did that about 25 years ago, there were not many women occupying that chair, Dennis. They would let females be the analyst to talk, but not lead the show. And as you're talking about, that's happening there in New Zealand and all over the world, more and more now, women are in the play-by-play role. And I'm one of the most experienced female play-by-plays in the United States, along with a couple of really terrific female colleagues who have been along the way, friends and colleagues as well.
Yeah, and what kind of sports were you sort of like doing it? Was it everything or was it certain niche kind of sports?
Well, so when I was producing 6 Olympic Games, the National Football League, basketball, all of it, heavyweight title fights, golf's majors. When I went to become on air, first I did sidelines, as you see a lot of women do for football games and such. And then play by play, I burst into everything. Men's and women's college basketball. I call a lot of volleyball internationally as well. Men's and women's beach, soccer, softball, water polo, anything that I could get in the chair for. The thing in television, Dennis, is you always say, of course I can. And then you figure it out after they ask you.
Yeah. And you know what? We come from this part of the world. When I used to travel to the US 4, 5, 6 times a year, just through the global role I had with Hewlett Packard and EDS before that. And so one thing I always wanted to do was go to an American football game or a hockey game or a basketball game. And I was in Dallas and I got tickets, or I was asked to go along for the Stanley Cup to watch it. And I was actually found out later on that I was the guest of the reporter, the guy that was actually calling the game on, and I can't remember his name, but he was a big known name for the hockey side of things. And it was really quite cool just to meet him, but also watch him doing his job live while he was on TV while the game was happening. It's an art. It's a talent. It's amazing how it all works. And so your 3 Emmy Awards, are they for the ESPN side of things?
Yes, they're all from ESPN work with our team. And it's funny, Dennis, when you talk about what he was doing as you observe. That's why I always say I have 3 kids and put it there, because it means I can do a lot all at once. And I always tell people when I'm speaking to a crowd, and I want interaction when I'm speaking, and I say, look, I've got 3 kids and an ADHD ex-husband. You cannot distract me. So go ahead and yell everything out. We always have a really good time. Because in play-by-play, you're doing several different things at one time.
Yeah. And it's not multitasking. It is doing things and being present in all of them at the same time is really, really quite key. Your book, Cultivating Audacity. Tell us what that's all about.
I feel like most of us have the thing that we've always wanted to do, but haven't done it yet. We're waiting for maybe the right time to do it, or we don't quite know how to get there. And as I was observing these super elite coaches leading, I realized that what they were really good at was taking risks and evaluating which risks were worth it and which ones were reckless. And that's the definition of audacity, the willingness to take bold risks. I don't think we're born with it. I think you have to grow it. That's the word cultivating. And so I have taken what I've observed in all these years with great coaches and put them in there in practical ways, addressing specifically, Dennis, the 4 barriers that tend to stand between us and the thing we want to do. And that's fear, time, money, or your inner critic.
Yeah. And those 4 do get in the way all the time. And I think it's everywhere. Leaders, entrepreneurs, whoever you are, it's always those 4 things. They always are there. Yeah, amazing. Good on you. That's a great book. So listeners, if you haven't read this book, go and check it out. We're going to be putting in the show notes the website for Anne-Marie, and go and listen or read the book. Or is it on Audible as well?
No, Dennis, I need to do that. I promise I'm going to do it in the next month or so.
There you go. So in a month or so's time, it'll be on Audible. But yeah, do check out the book. Fantastic. Those 4 barriers. And I know, listeners, every single one of you, I don't even have to know you. I just know that we all face those different things at some time in our life. And so, wow, that's pretty cool. Now,
thank you, Dennis. You know what was important to me as I wrote it was not just to say these are the 4 things that are in your way or you should really go for it, but to tell you how. And that's what we do. There's a chapter for each barrier, because I don't want to just say, hey, fear's in your way. Good luck with that. No, it's like, okay, get curious about it, examine it, and here's how you can work with it and make friends with fear, because people talk about overcoming your fears. I think that's baloney. It's always going to be with you. So you may as well make friends with it, bring it along, but just not let it make decisions.
Yep. And I think things like the pandemic and so forth, they tend to emphasize those 4 things even more. And I actually think what we probably are seeing today as a result of what we've gone through the last 5 years is there's another pandemic which is around mental health and things like that. And that's where the fear/the inner critic is probably the big one that's come out more for a lot of people. Are you seeing that in the US as well?
Yes, absolutely. The social disconnection, our Surgeon General here in the United States has declared a loneliness epidemic because we're all so isolated from each other. And part of that is due to this fantastic technology that we now have and all the services, right? You can get dinner delivered to your door. You can work from home. You don't really need to have a lot of interaction with other people. And while it seemed at first to be efficient, now it's isolating us. So that's leading to a mental health epidemic.
Yes, balance is the important thing here. I think you have to have a balance with everything. Otherwise, yeah, you tend to it sort of tends to go one way, and it's not very good. No, not at all. Anne-Marie, leadership. How did you actually get into leadership? But also, in particular, what I would like to know as well is what did you learn in those boardrooms, the locker rooms, and that with those coaches and seeing the leadership and the leaders as players? What did you see? So, how did you get into it? And then, what have you been seeing?
Sure. As I rose through the ranks at ESPN behind the camera, I became a producer, a feature producer, a field producer, and then Los Angeles bureau producer, where I would work with a team of a cameraman, a reporter, audio technician, maybe a runner. And so in those leadership roles, it was very important to be a clear communicator. And I learned so much from the coaches I was watching. And the ones who were most successful were shape-shifting leaders. I call them. I talk a lot about Phil Jackson, who coached an NBA team here with Michael Jordan on it, and then went to coach another NBA team with Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal. Those are universal names. And what I observed Phil Jackson doing was working really hard to weave individuality into a powerful group culture. And what he did was really analyze what was the motivation. I say when you want to make a big change, examine why you want to make it. Is it intrinsic? Is it extrinsic? Are you doing it for somebody else? Because that's never going to work. To show somebody or hope they notice, or even if your goal is to make more money, I don't think that works either. It has to be something a little bit more pure for you. And so Phil Jackson, for example, would look at Michael Jordan and say, he needs basketball. Basketball is his identity. And he could coach him one way, where he would look at another player of his, maybe a little bit less well-known, named Dennis Rodman, who was a fantastic defender and rebounder in basketball and very quirky personality, just a very much fringe type of personality. And he was able to recognize Dennis doesn't need basketball, but we actually need Dennis to win. And so he would do things like give Dennis, he's famous for giving Dennis time off in the middle of the season to go to Las Vegas and have an absolute weekend of debauchery that would kill most of us, because that was going to refresh this particular individual. Whereas Michael Jordan's like, hey, man, I want a vacation. And coach is like, no, you need basketball and we need you. So that's not going to happen. But I really admired that. He studied each person's motivation and was able to use that to get the very best out of them.
Yeah. And I think that's the art of leadership as well, is actually understanding the strengths of people, the areas they might need to work on, but their talent, but it's their need. And if you can tap into what's driving them, that's part of it. That's where you go off and win championships, right? Because you know how to do that. But I also love what you said before about weaving the individual person and putting it into the culture of the organizer, or into the organization. So I could talk about how you put it into the fabric of weave it through the fabric of the organization. But what you as an individual needs, what I need, is two different things. And the podcast, when I went through this tumor in my voice and I lost my voice and it was hard to get something out. Well, this is also, I wouldn't call it therapy, but I would say it's a bit about actually helping my voice being heard, your voice being heard, but the people who are listening to this, we're developing their leadership voice for the future.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And one of the things that Phil Jackson was great at was that he was superior at identifying the goal, whatever the goal was, and leaving anything that didn't interfere with that out of the equation. And that was something that you could see, like the goal for him in that year was to win a championship. And the fact that he might lose a couple of games while he let this player go to Vegas and get refreshed wasn't going to take away from their goal of winning the championship. So he let that go. And I learned that in my own leadership style, because there were many men who had trouble accepting me as a leader, especially when I was in my 20s and producing. And if I can tell you one quick story, because it personifies the whole thing, was I was producing a heavyweight title fight with our fantastic crew at Sports Center, and Mike Tyson was fighting. And so we were setting up in Las Vegas for our interview, and somebody was unhappy with something we were doing. And a man came up to our crew. It was me, all male crew with me. And he said, who's in charge? And the guys pointed to me, and I said, how may I help you? And he said, I want to talk to the guy in charge. And I said, well, I'm in charge. How may I help you? And he looked at me. I was probably 26 or 27 at the time. And he looked at me and he said, I want to talk to your boss, which I can understand, except I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, across the country from my boss, who was in Connecticut, who wasn't going to have anything to do with it. I'm the one in charge. So I said to part of our crew, I said, Jeff, would you please get a chair for this gentleman? So I got a chair and I said, sir, please have a seat. And this is what I mean by Phil Jackson saying, leave everything that doesn't interfere out of it. Because I went back to work. Like, we needed to set up for this interview. And so I was doing that. About 5 minutes later, he was super hot and then said, hey, is this guy ever going to show up? And I said, what guy? And he said, the guy in charge. And I said, I already told you that I was in charge. I got the chair so you could take a moment to wrap your head around it. Can I help you with something? And it was just those where I learned from Phil Jackson, those guys aren't going to fluster me, right? It's just not part of our one goal, which was to get a great interview. So I just left his drama out of the equation until he was ready to talk to me.
Fantastic. That's awesome. What a great story. That's really, really good, because I think there is probably people today that still actually experience that. Oh, yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So that's good. Really cool. Really cool story. Hey, now this person could be alive or from history. Who's your favorite leader and why?
My favorite leader, this is so unconventional, my favorite leader is my father, my dad, who has now passed. I'm one of 5. And just watching the way that he was leading his company, he was part of the telephone company here in the United States and was pretty high up. And watching the connections he had with his employees and how he was very demanding and exacting, but also of himself. And then watching the way that our family was led by him. Of course, we were all very different. Talk about weaving individuality into a powerful group culture. And what my father was really good at is that we've often been sold this idea of like finding balance, become well-rounded. And that was not something my father believed in at all. He was like, play to your strengths. Somebody else's strength will be the thing that you're a little bit lacking in. And I think, Dennis, that really plays to having a powerful culture is if I'm best at this, why do you want me to work on that? Maybe somebody else can do that because that's their strength.
Yeah. Yeah. Great way of saying it as well. I got goosebumps when you said your father. Why? You're the 6th person I think I'm interviewing the last 2 weeks around the world. And every single one of them have said their father when I asked that question.
Wow.
Every single one of you. And I'm like, whoa, that's amazing. Sometimes.
That's cool. I love that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I think this is the thing is that we can learn so much from our parents, from our grandparents who are there. Because most people will think about a leader like the Gandhis, the so forth. But, sometimes it's at home and it's our upbringing. Sometimes it's not. Right. And it might be,
if you're lucky enough, it could be at home.
Yeah. And it might be someone else outside who's been an influence for you too, uncle or an auntie or a coach, like the coach that you've just been sharing. Yeah. So I love what he says too about playing to your strength, because it's easy for people to look at their employees, their team members and things like that, and they look for the weaknesses to see what they can fix rather than thinking about the strength. And let's play to that, because the other stuff will come if you play to the strength. And then the other side is, as you said, find someone else to fill that gap where there might be some areas that we're not strong at. And I think it's a key for a leader to actually be able to notice that. And I think that's what you're talking about before with Phil, the coach before, was about what he did, and he could see that and actually bring it to the front of things and helping.
And I think it's important in leading our own lives too. One of the things I discovered, time and money are 2 of the other barriers that we talked about. And of course, we never have enough time, right? And what I learned was there were some things that were taking a lot of time that I really didn't enjoy. They weren't my strengths. As I mentioned, I'm a speaker. So drawing up contracts, expense reports, those kinds of things, I don't enjoy it. It's not my strength. But when I realized I could trade some money to buy back time or energy, it changed everything for me, because it felt frivolous for me to hire somebody to do my expense reports and my contracts, right? Like, shouldn't I take care of those things myself and save that money? But what I found was when I hired someone to do those things that I didn't enjoy and wasn't quick at, I had more time to prospect, more time to get more speaking engagements, or more time to spend writing the book. And so it was the same thing, even personally, as you lead yourself. Like, what's consuming time that's not moving you forward? And can you exchange some money to get back time or energy?
Yep, absolutely. And then if you do that, the inner critic may stop as well because you're overthinking it and you're going like, I don't want to be doing this. And you're right. There are certain things that you don't need to be doing that others can do. And the people that you got to do that, is that the things that they love doing?
Yes, exactly. That's the point. There are some people who are absolutely fantastic at that kind of detail work, but they may not be comfortable speaking to people, prospecting, speaking on stage. So together, right, we form a team and a group culture where everybody is valued for whatever their strength is. That's important no matter how big your corporation is, how small your business is turning people from disengaged employees into invested teammates.
Yep.
And one of the ways you do it is by recognizing who they are and where do they feel most successful.
Anne-Marie, you've got a lot of experience here with sporting teams, but it's not just the sporting side of things, but it's also in ESPN, because that's more or less like a corporation or a company that runs things too. So you've seen it from that side. Do you think that a lot of things, sporting analogies and what you've seen on the sports sides can actually be applied to all areas of life around leadership?
Oh, I think there's a lot of potential crossover. The biggest one that I see is the ability to compete. And especially in the women's sector, but it's true in the men's sector too. Like to compete. The thing with audacity that I talk about is that the win is not in the outcome, right? It's not just when you get the sales that you want or win the account or whatever. It's in the action. That's where the win in audacity is, in the fact that you're taking the action. And that's competition. Are you willing to put your best out there against somebody else's best? And even if you don't get the outcome you want, you've now got information to move forward. And that's true of a team, and that's true of in business. Where do we need to work on? It's exposed by your competition. And you have to look at all failure, I don't even use the word failure anymore, as a data point.
Yep. Yeah, and a data point. But then the important thing is to do something about it and then learn and move on from it. And do something about it. Yeah, it's good point. Very good point. Now, the show here is called Leadership is Changing. When I say that title or that statement, what does it mean for you?
It means that it's becoming more varied in terms not only of just the people leading. Obviously, I'm thinking of women who now are in more leadership roles than they were 35 years ago when I started, but also the one-size-fits-all idea of leadership. You adapt to me and you adapt to the way that I'm leading you has completely changed. And that embracing that kind of diversity of thought is a key driver of innovation. And so that's what I think of when I think of leadership is changing, is being able as a leader to say, I've never thought of it this way. Let's dig in a little bit more to what you're talking about as a potential way for this to move forward.
Yeah, put your ego in your back pocket, as I say, and take that on board, what people are saying to you. I haven't thought about the example you just gave, because I think it's sometimes those leaders' egos get in the way and they don't want to listen to others. And then they wonder why people don't speak up or offer things. Well, you've just poo-pooed what they just said, or you've just not acknowledged it, right? And it's done.
Right.
So, yeah, you're right. So that diversity of thought, as you're saying, spot on. It's really, really quite cool.
Yeah. Well, why would they bring you a second idea if your first idea you shut down?
Yeah.
Either just by not following up or whatever. It's about getting curious about different ideas. Maybe the idea that's being brought to you as a leader isn't the perfect one, but maybe it will lead you to something that fits more. And you do that by encouraging and making it safe for your employees to bring up some audacious ideas and some new ways of working that might work for you or might lead you to some other ideas about what's best for your team to work.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, you know how you talked about the money and the time as one of those, the two of the four barriers. I'm finding that life seems to be getting a lot faster. We said that 10 years ago, and it seems to be getting faster even now, even more. And it's like, what's driving us? A lot of it is technology and so forth, but it's also people wanting things a lot quicker. What for a leader to be successful in today's world, in any walk of life, community, sporting, business, whatever it is there anything they might need to do and put in place to be successful in a fast-paced, ever-changing world from your perspective?
I write about something in the book that I call the urgency fallacy. We have been sold somewhere along the way that because something is urgent, it must be important. And I disagree with that. And I think in order to create space for what's important, you need to sometimes put what's urgent aside. And by that, urgent is usually a response to a request from somebody. Answer the text, reply to the email, sign the permission slip, whatever it is, set up the meeting. That's a response. And urgent can go on indefinitely. And I think a lot of people say, well, I will do the thing, come up with a new idea when I get all these urgent tasks out of the way. That never happens. Urgent never ends. And so by creating space for what's important, which means you're going to have to put a pause on things that are urgent. And so here's an example. When I started to write the book, right, I already mentioned I've got a full-time broadcasting career, a full-time keynote speaker. I'm a mother of 3. So I decided to write a book, right, in my free time? Like that doesn't exist. So I thought, well, I'm going to get up at 4:30 every day and I'm going to write for an hour and then I'm going to get on with the rest of my day and the kids and television and speaking. And that didn't even last a week, Dennis, because I hated it. I am not particularly inspired to write a bestseller at 4:30 in the morning. You know what I mean? Like that's not where my best ideas are coming from. But I still needed to make the time. So for me, it was 4 15-minute chunks during the day. For somebody else, it might be, 2 half-hour chunks. I literally wrote this book in 15-minute chunks, either sitting on my bathroom floor, because every parent knows that's the only place you can have privacy, just like lock that door. And, when the kids knock at the door and say, I'm hungry, you say, same, I'll be out in 15. Or waiting for my kids while they're at practice, sitting in the car and writing and writing and writing. Because if I hadn't made time for it, it would have gone on forever, as people have written books. And it's like, I've been writing this for 7 years. So thinking about that in terms of leadership and in a corporation, maybe you do need to put a pause on some of the urgent things. Maybe you do need to protect your employees' time away from the office to say, okay, we're not going to be communicating after hours. I mean, what a shocker, right? We've all got cell phones and everything else. But by you giving them the example and the freedom to say, I'm going to let you to get to what else is important to you when we're not at work so we can absolutely dig in at work, then you're leading with wellness, right? We talk about mental health and boundaries, and your team will be more refreshed. So it's about figuring out urgent versus important.
Yeah. Well, listeners, if you haven't already realized, you better get this book. There's some real insights there. It's really good. And I think there'll be a lot of people who can actually relate to you about being on the bathroom floor and just having that time out to be able to do things. Because it seems to be people are just doing more and more and more. And I'm going like, that's great that you want to do all this stuff. But is there anything that you might want to stop doing? Because how much more are you going to take on? Yeah, definitely. There's people who talk about the 5 a.m. club and there's things like that, and it depends, and it's not for everybody. But I think what I'm hearing you say is do what works for you. And
Yes.
But the thing is, it's doing what works for you rather than going and making excuses. I haven't got time. We all don't have time. It's what we do with the time. It's what we do with the money. It's what we do with the fear. It's what we do with our own inner critic. It's about what we're doing with things. And how we handle things is what counts. And yeah, definitely. Sounds like from what you've been sharing, it was really great that you did go ahead and write this book and make it happen.
Yeah, it was fun. First of all, everybody told me how brutal it would be to write a book. I don't think it was brutal, but as I was writing it, because I wanted to share some of these ideas, because I've made a bunch of audacious decisions during my life. I've left ESPN before because I didn't like my lifestyle, even though I love the job. I was working 6 at night to 3 in the morning, 6 days a week with Mondays off. And I thought, I don't want to do this, but I love the job. So I wanted to move to Los Angeles to be Los Angeles bureau producer. And my boss said no, because we already had somebody there and I was trying to get him to add a second. And so I ended up thinking, okay, there's a cost. I think we have to think about the cost all the time. What's the cost? Which risks are reckless and which ones are worth it? And it changes certainly during our lives. And at that point, I quit my job and I drove cross country. If I did that now, that would be reckless. But at that point, it was worth it. I had enough money saved up. And what ended up happening, the unintended consequence, is that within a year, ESPN had hired me back at double the salary, right? Like that wasn't my intention. When I talk about pure intention, I was trying to create a better life for myself. The unintended outcome was more money. And so reckless versus worth it is really key, and understanding that those parameters will change throughout your life.
Very good. Very good. And actually what you did is you did a pause on ESPN and then they brought you back again, right? So that's,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
a couple of times. I did that a couple of times where eventually I would call and say, hey, I need to live in Colorado. And they'd be like, just fine.
Yep.
Fine. I needed to move to San Francisco. I needed to move to Colorado. They were,
Yeah.
as long as I got the work done. And that's great leadership, right? And allowing me to do that, because it isn't like my work dropped off in any way. It was revved up and I was able to be a really engaged and invested teammate while still, a lot of that I moved for my marriage. I was still able to be a partner in my own marriage at that time.
Yeah. And being engaged is the key one there too. So I think today, and the next question is more about, because you and I have been talking about leadership side of things. If we think about from an employee's perspective, working from home, things like that, you know, for some people it might work for them and they actually, I don't know, I've noticed a lot of people actually don't do a lot of work when they're at home, and there's a whole lot of others that do a lot more than they should be doing because they are working from home. They don't have that transition into the office and then back home again. So sometimes they just go from the bedroom to the bedroom because that's where the laptop is. And so they don't have those boundaries as you talk about and break away from it. Yeah. Have you
Yeah.
seen the employees' expectations of leaders, maybe even the sporting field side of things too? Has it changed at all? Are they looking at leaders differently?
I think, yes, I love that question because I think they're looking for more of a personal connection than we expected or even dreamt of 35 years ago. And I think it's really tough on leaders, right? Because you're trying to lead, but this is the expectation now, is that you're going to understand me as your employee. And that's a lot of work when you're one of the leaders. So being able to efficiently model what you're looking for and value what you're looking for. And if that means saying, hey, I'm not going to be available for any post-work calls between 6 and 8 p.m. If you need to reach me after 8. When you're modeling that, that helps you have that connection with all of your employees piece by piece. But I think there is absolutely a demand for more personalization than ever. And I fully recognize that's exhausting on leaders.
Yeah, it is. It's very exhausting, yeah. And I think people should, there's another piece of that, 6 to 8, I can't take calls, but then after 8, call me. I think they're missing the AM piece on it as well. Call me after 8 a.m. In other words, tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, depending on what it is you're looking for.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's interesting when you talk about working from the home because, as you said, some people are really good at it and some people are really distracted. And what I needed to do when I'm in right now, this was my son's bedroom. He went to college and he's bummed that I've taken over the whole thing and there's no room. But when I walk out of this door, I close the door and then I am with my family. So I actually don't do any work that's not taken place in this office. I never bring my laptop down to the couch because for me, I needed those clear boundaries. I would not do well working on a laptop in my room at all.
Yeah. That's the rituals that people need to put in place, whatever it is, to then turn off. That's work. That's my home. Because then if you're harboring the laptop to the couch, then are you really present with your partner, with your family? Maybe not. More than likely not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the creativity of ideas. Like when I started writing the book is when I really took over this room and got a new desk because I find signaling very important. So I need to signal to myself, here we do work. When I wrote this book, a lot of it I wrote on a plane as well. And so, first of all, don't even think about talking to me on a plane, right? Like I haven't spoken to anybody on a plane since 1993 because that is the best office for me. But I would take this time, this sounds super woo-woo California-ish, Dennis, but I actually would bring colored pencils with me and I would sketch, and I'm not an artist in any way, for a bit first. And it was my way to say to my brain, okay, now we're going to go into creativity mode. Let's just do something. And I am telling you, that changed everything. And whenever I had writer's block, I would bring out these colored pencils and just do a little bit of doodling. And it was some kind of a signal to my brain, now we're going to get creative.
See, I don't think it is woo-woo because I think it's, when I work with executives around the world and some of them are thinking about their next career move, they start thinking about, what's the next job? And I go, no, it's not the next job. It's the next one after that is what you should be thinking about because the next job is the stepping stone to get there. But actually, who cares about what the job is? Where do you want your life to be in 5 years' time? And they go, what do you mean? I went, where do you want to go? Because what's the point in doing all this work if you get somewhere and that's not where you want to be? So get yourself either, I'm going to call it A4 or A3 size. I think in the US, I think it might be legal, and I don't know what, maybe it's the A3 size.
Letter size.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. A sketchbook, and go and
Mhm.
start writing, drawing, numbers, whatever's right for you. Just keep doing page after page after page to dump from your head to start creating that blank canvas and create the life that you want. And that's what you're doing. And that's a very good thing to do, because a lot of people try to keep it in their head, and then they're wondering why they can't sleep or they're not present because
Yeah,
their brain's doing overtime because they don't want to forget it. And I'm going like, get it on paper.
exactly.
Mm-hmm. How about to get your crystal ball out now and think about the future? Where do you see leadership being in 5 years?
I see leadership. Let's think. In 5 years, where do I see leadership?
Because 5
Kind
years
of
goes a long way. It goes very quick, right? 5 years ago was a pandemic. Now look at us.
right, exactly. And that's where I'm trying to think ahead in terms of as we become more isolated because we can work from anywhere, how will we as leaders be able to stay interconnected? And I think a lot of it, I'm just spitballing here, it has to do with wellness and recognizing our need for connection again. Like I think we were so disconnected during the pandemic that then we got to, hey, I can do this by myself in my house, working from home. And I think in 5 years, we're going to swing back, not to everybody going into the office and sitting in cubicles, but in valuing being interconnected in a different way that I yet can't imagine.
Yeah, good. And the wellness thing is very important, because I think that as we talked about before, life's getting faster and faster. Things are going to be thrown at us. It's amazing what's going to be. So we're going to have to be fit to be able to take it. Anne-Marie, hey, thanks for joining me. If our listeners are wanting to get hold of you, where should we go?
Thank you. I would love to hear from them. My website is annemarieanderson.com. There's an E on the end of Anne. And there, if you're curious about the book, you can get the first chapter free. And I did that on purpose, Dennis, because I wanted people to have access to it, read it, and start to think, yeah, right, maybe now is the right time, because I'm telling you, it definitely is. So you can find me there. You can find me on Instagram at Anne-Marie Anderson TV, or of course, LinkedIn.
Awesome. Anne-Marie, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you for having me, Dennis. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. There you go, listeners. Are you taking risks? Is there a willingness for you to be bold? And think about those 4 barriers that Anne-Marie's just been sharing with us. So, do you have the ability to compete? Hey, it's always a pleasure being with you. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Denis Gianoutsos. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.